Welcome to Happily Ever After's 5 Ways to Unleash Your Writing Mojo Magic. Everybody wants to write a novel, but somehow, somewhere, those best intentions get stuck, and instead of a finished manuscript, there's either a blank page or loads of documents with the first few paragraphs. So which one are you? Sometimes when we write down our goals, we make down these really big goals like I want to be a published author, or I want to get an agent at the end of the year, or I want to have a 3-book publishing deal. So those are fantastic goals to have, and I'm not saying don't have those goals. But what I'm saying is there are a lot of steps, lots of mini goals if you like, to getting to the big goal. So often what's happened is you've made that goal maybe too big, and it fills you with possibly a great sense of overwhelm rather than with excitement. Excitement absolutely when you think about finally having reached there, but when you actually have to go through the day-to-day tasks of getting there, it's like, oh, no, I can't do that. That's too much. What then tends to happen is you then have the same goal for years and years and years in a row. How many of you have had that where you've said every year, this year I'm going to write my novel. This year is going to be the year. And you know what? Each year just rolls on past and you just get older and you just procrastinate more. And that's the next thing we're going to look at as well is, would you rather do anything, and I mean anything, like walk your pet goldfish, rather than actually sit down and write? Why Happily Ever After? Well, I am a romance writer, so I'm walking my talk. I'm a multi-published award-winning romance author who is still on the romance writer's journey. I'm not a big star like your Kristen Higgins or a Beverly Jenkins, but one day I hope to be there. But I'm not still sitting there with my computer open thinking, gosh, what do I write now? So I'm somewhere in the middle. I've also been teaching for a number of years, including doing presentations and workshops for the romance writers of South Africa. I'm also a manuscript appraiser for a leading US romance publisher. So I know what the market's looking for, I know what publishers are looking for when it comes to romance, and I know how to structure the novel, what it is that makes a publisher say, yes, this is the submission that we want. So I'm well positioned to help anybody who's stuck in their writing journey. Where are you in your writing journey? First up, we have the talker. Now, the talker is identifiable by the amount of talking they accomplish rather than the amount of bum in seat. A talker wants to write a novel, has ideas, may even have attended 1 or 2 courses, but has not written a single word. Nothing, not a zero, zip. It's all talk. Every year, the talker will write down their goal of being a published author, and every year, this goal gets relegated to the following year. For the talker, talking about the goal is akin to making it happen. However, the reality is nothing is happening. The talker can also be known as the procrastinator. Does this sound familiar to anybody out there? Our next stuck person is the stop-starter. Now, I was this person for a long time. So one step beyond the talker is the stop-starter. Now, these writers have lists and lists of documents with novels that they've started. Now, I'm not talking about half-finished manuscripts. I'm literally talking these documents span anywhere from about a line to about 3 or 4 pages. Sometimes they hit a good spot and write an entire few thousand words, and then next project. So I've got lots of these sort of like starter novels. I don't even know how else to describe them. They've all got terrible names, and they've all got a couple of paragraphs of stuff, like an idea that sounded good, or a paragraph, or something, but nothing else happened after that, and then it just gets relegated to a folder. I've got ones from 2006 sitting there. On the positive side, though, the stop-starter has loads of ideas. The problem is they just want to explore every single one. Our next stuck writer is the can't finisher. And the can't finisher is exactly that. Someone who can't seem to finish that manuscript. So they want to finish. More than anything, they want to write the end. But they can't. There's some other kind of block stopping them from actually completing a manuscript. So the can't finisher goes back and edits their first draft as it's happening, adding in more characters, changing situations, and generally tweaking and fiddling. The result? They have a half a novel, or even 3/4 of a novel, but no actual finished product. Why? Because it's not perfect. If they could just do this or that, then it would be ready. And of course the irony is often the more they're tweaking and fiddling with the novel as they're going along, the more this novel just careers off the tracks and will probably end up entirely unpublishable anyway. Well, it will never be finished, so from that as well. So it's another cheap stalling tactic. Then our last kind of stuck writer is the uninspired. Now, this can happen at any stage in your writing career. Maybe you wrote your first novel in a series and now, muse has disappeared entirely. It's like literally I'm sitting down, I'm ready to write, nothing is coming. Maybe you were writing away in the flow, everything was wonderful and pink unicorns, and then something happens and now you just don't feel it at all. I know I've had gaps where there have been months where I just have written nothing at all, nothing comes through. There's no idea. I look at everything, I'm like, no, I try writing every day. I know some people suggest that you do write every day, but in my process, that doesn't always work, because then it's literally, I've got nothing to say and there's no story. It's like it's just stopped. It's like I know that I've got to wait for that thing to arrive. Admittedly, that's my process, might not be yours. So which one do you identify with the most? And it's worth pointing out that you could be a combination of this. So you can be an uninspired can't finisher, or a stop-starter who's also, a non-finisher as well. So maybe you're one of those people with lots of documents with lots of bits of story and then the half-finished manuscript as well, because that was going to be the one. And of course it isn't the one. So this is all an extremely frustrating state to be in, because you want to write. It's like, well, what's happening here? It's not quite the same as if you want to be a runner. You do actually get out of the door. You can get out the door and just do the running part, and you'll have good days and you'll have bad days. This is a slightly different situation. It's like, why? I don't understand it. This is my passion. This is my dream. This is what I've always wanted to be. Whenever I think back to school and people asked, what is it I wanted to do? It's like, I wanted to be a writer. Now, I can identify with this because certainly I know when I was around 15, 16 years old, I was writing a really bad soap opera called Saints at School, and I used to write a couple of pages of it, and that was all I ever wanted to be, was a writer. So, and I had this soap opera, and I wrote some short stories, and I was like, wow, this is me, I'm a writer. And then I proceeded to leave school and not write anything for about the next 10 years. Nothing at all. And then when I started again, it was like trying to find my groove that I'd left way back there sometime. And it was difficult. I was in one of these states. I was in quite a couple of those states. As I mentioned before, the stop-starter and me were really good friends. The talker in me was there as well at some stage, because I always had an idea that maybe I'll pick up writing again. So what causes any of these stuck states? Well, the first thing is creative recovery. So now this is a really important thing to bear in mind when you're writing, is that, as I mentioned, when I was 15, 16, every kid, I would have hated to be called a kid back then, but I was, starts off as a creator, but somewhere along the way, that natural curiosity, enthusiasm slips away. We put away our paint and clay for more grown-up pursuits. You can't be a writer, there's no money in it. You can't be an artist, there's no money in it. Generally it's around its commercial value, or the idea that somehow it's not work. It's plenty of work. Or that it's not noble work. It's like you're not out there saving the world, so why should you pursue a career as a writer? And admittedly there's no university, well there is now, but when I was more younger there was no university degree that was creative writing. So maybe a teacher or a close friend also could have said something derogatory about your creative work, or poured scorn over your creative dreams. I remember quite clearly being told that there was no way my writing was any good because one particular teacher absolutely loathed it. I remember thinking, oh, well, that's the end of that then. If she doesn't like my writing, that's it. And at school, essays that they particularly loved were these really sort of burning, moody things about burning jacaranda trees. Like, well, I couldn't write that if I tried. So therefore I assumed I had no talent whatsoever. So the result of all of these experiences that we have is that as much as we want to unleash our creativity, we believe it to be something stunted or ugly, incomplete or unwanted. We judge our rough work by someone's polished final draft, and we let harsh words swill around in the background, hampering any creativity that's trying to breathe. And I'm sure you're familiar with that, when you feel like there's this voice saying, well, that's rubbish. Who's going to read that? As total junk. Oh, please, that's so bad. That kind of a vibe, which doesn't help anybody. The truth is, you're never going to make anybody happy with your creative work. Everyone happy. But if you don't voice the work in your creative heart, you will absolutely make yourself miserable. So even if it doesn't have a bigger audience someday, and I assure you it will, write for you, for starters, because your audience of one, needs to write those things or let that stuff out. So creative recovery is a lifelong affliction for many, and it vacillates along a spectrum of all right to I totally suck. For many it manifests as imposter syndrome, but for others it manifests as chronic fear of ever starting. So this is where your talker comes in. Your talker is still in a period of creative recovery. They haven't allowed themselves permission to just exist on the page yet. Try that. Just allow yourself a bit of permission to just write. It can be anything. Just write it out there. But absolutely, you get writers who've written many novels still standing there going, wow, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how that happened. Well, that was a bit of fluke. Well, it's not. It's just owning your identity as a creative person and acknowledging that everybody has an identity as a creative person, and yours is that of writer. Second place where we get stuck is the process, the actual sitting down to write it part. So now there's no one way to write a book, much like there's no one way to wash dishes or conduct your relationships. There's no one way. Some writers write at desks, others in potting sheds, others on trains to work. I know a lot of people who have to go out to coffee shops. I hate coffee shops. I like coffee shops just fine if I'm meeting someone for a chat. I'm not going to write there. It's too noisy. It's too much. There's music carrying up. It's not for me. Weekends, and they squish it all together then. Some people write on their computers, their laptops, others by hand in a notebook. Your way is the right way. But your creativity is uniquely yours as well. So sometimes an idea takes a long time to develop. Sometimes it drops from the sky. Other times you'll start a piece of work and put it to one side. You might come back to it, you might never. Sometimes that gap's a few weeks, other times years. Some people like deadlines to work to, others don't. So your creativity also has its own process about how it works. For me, it's just going to sound nuts, but I'll be watching something or listening to something, and it's like it then goes on repeat. And I have to keep watching it. And it can be a 3-second clip or a piece of music, and I'll just keep watching it, and the story bursts from there. I would admit I don't know anybody else who does it this way. I'm pretty sure there is somebody else on the planet who gets so inspired like that. But that's when I know, oh, there's a story. Right, okay, let's explore it. But that doesn't happen 20 times a year. It happens a few times, once, twice, 3 times maybe. Or there'll be something that pushes, or an idea that says, well, you need to look at that. You need to look at that. You need to look at that. For other people, it's something different. What's your way? Another thing to keep in mind when we talk about the process are things like planning, thinking, and researching are all part of the process too. They're all part of this process called writing. But for some strange reason, everybody's all focused on that. Sit down and write, sit down and write, sit down and write. Well, sometimes you actually need to know what it is you're writing about, have a vague idea, have plotted some motivation, drawn something up, and then can start writing. Now that takes some time too. You need to take some time out to be busy with that. Also consider how much time you're going to be spending editing and rewriting. So it's an entire process. So look at the whole thing. Some authors actually describe giving birth to their novel. So now that's a whole amount of time, at least 9 months, just incubating something, nurturing it, letting it grow. Some ideas take a little time. You water them, you see how they pop out. The third place you might have got stuck is the craft. So it could be that you've got stuck simply because there are gaps in your knowledge of the craft. If you're not sure what should happen next, maybe you need help with something like plotting. Or maybe you go back and you have a quick read and you're like, oh my word, this is boring to write, because there's no emotional arc and you're not quite sure how to put the emotional arc in. You know, it's got to be there, but you're just, it's like, oh, now I'm a little bit lost. So you need to go and get a little bit more training in craft work. All authors, no matter where they are in the publishing ladder, at some time or other need some help with their craft. So there is no harm in going to as many courses as possible. There are so many on offer, my own included, where you can find out how to overcome these blops and bobs and bumps. Just simply building up your skills, because I can quite assure you, even if you have an English degree, a lot of people say, oh, I've got an English degree, I can write. An English degree equips you with the ability to critically reflect on a text. That is not the same as allows you to write a novel from start to finish and encounter things such as plot, character development, internal conflict, external conflict. No, it doesn't teach you that. So you'd need to go and actually gain these skills from somewhere else. And then when you're armed, then you've got them in your toolbox, you're like, oh, okay, now I'm not stuck here. I know what to do with the rest of my manuscript, rather than look at it and go, oh, well, that's just a mess. And the last place you might be stuck is simply making the connection. You need other writers. These can be writers anywhere on their journey. So they can be beginners, they can be pros, anybody in between. Other writers can be a nice source of inspiration for you, assistance, commiseration, empathy. They are your support structure, and they are everywhere. I'm not suggesting that you necessarily join a writers group where you write together. Maybe that's not your thing. Might not be ideal for you. I don't like it. I don't like writing in a group. I'd far rather talk and listen and find out what's going on. But even if you have a forum, I know we have it at Rosa. There's a coffee club meeting. It's on a Thursday morning. I think it's every 2 weeks. And it's just for all of the authors to sit around and chat. And everybody's in a different place on their path. Everybody's got different goals for their writing as well. Not everybody's got the same goal. And we all sit and we discuss and we learn from each other. And that's what's helpful. That's how you start knowing. Don't go to this agent. This one's a bit dodgy. You know, how was your experience with this publisher? Well, this happened. I'm really stuck. I don't know what to do with this character. Should this book be third person or first person? I'm not sure which one's working, but when I switched it into first, it seems to be working. Having some sort of forum where you can share your feelings about the process, firstly, it builds in that camaraderie, and it also helps give you ideas about how to move yourself forward. You also realize you're not alone, is that every other writer is going through the same hell, and sometimes it really does feel like hell. So those are the 4 places that you could potentially have got stuck. So it's either in the creative recovery, in the process of writing itself, in the craft, or it's in your connection with other writers. So which one do you identify with the most? And you might be in a place where it's all 4 of them. I mean, that happens too. So here are 5 ways that I've got to help you get past this stuck state, help you start writing again in some way. And they all relate back to those 4 things that you might be stuck in, the 4 places that you might be stuck in. So the first one is be prepared to suck. So if you have a look around Goodreads, it's always fun to type in a book that you loved or a book that you hated and have a look, see what other people said about it. So I've got an example here by Julie Murphy Dumplin. Now I've chosen this because right now as I speak, the movie is out and it seems to be doing very well. It seems to have got great reviews. So her book has been, she sold the film rights clearly. She has a film. She's in the film, apparently, at the end. I mean, wow, this is like, wow, author's dream on steroids. It's a New York Times bestseller. Fantastic. 5-star reviews, there are definitely those. And here's an example I have of one. There's not one thing I didn't like about this book. But there are just as many 1-star reviews. I have many things to say about it, so let me just make a list of the things I hated, crossed out, disliked this book. So you can't make everybody happy. And if we look on the next one as well, 50 Shades of Grey. Again, we've got quite a polarized audience on this one. Some people love it, others hate it. Again, this woman has made a fortune off her books. Love them or hate them. And there's a whole string of films, all hugely publicized. This woman, she can retire, her kids can retire, her grandkids can probably retire off her royalties. That's how well she's done with these books, how commercially successful she's been. And she's got legions of fans. So look, 5 stars. Wow, 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 wow. I still feel somewhat under the spell of this book. I am so beguiled by it. Book illusion. It was honestly an amazing read, and one which I meant to just skim a few sample pages of, but ended up buying and then staying up the entire night to finish. Versus, I was beginning to wonder if I needed to change some of my 2-star books to 1-star. I was thinking that I might not ever personally read a book worthy of 1-star, and I was messing up my scale by giving some of the more lame books I've read lately 2 stars instead of 1. Thank you, E.L. James, for proving to me that there was something worth waiting for, something that truly exemplifies the meaning of terrible. Can't please everyone, and you won't please everyone. So the purpose of looking at these Goodreads reviews is to let you know that in your creative recovery, where you're worried that people are going to say bad things about your work, they are. Some people won't even bother to read your book and give you a bad review, as is what happened to one of our writer friends. So you have to just roll with it. It's like it's part of the process. It's part of the industry. It's what happens. But don't let it stop you from carrying on writing the book that you love, because someone out there is giving it the 5 stars, saying, "Wow, I feel like I found my tribe. This is amazing. Please, I can't wait for your next one." That's who you're writing for yourself and for that person. And they're there, and you'll start gathering them up. Takes time. Another example I have here is from G.R.R. Martin. Again, man has an HBO TV series, which admittedly took about 15 years from when he actually released the first Game of Thrones book, which was The Song of Fire and Ice. So, again, that creative process took a long time. So look at this fantastic line. The sight of their arousal was arousing, though Daenerys Targaryen found it comical as well. Well, that's amazing writing right there, isn't it? Stunning. And some editor thought, oh yeah, okay, that was all right, and copy-pasted, all right, stuck it across. Said that was fine. There are lots of dreadful lines out there written by fantastic writers. You only have to look at the really bad sex awards and see that generally the names that pop up there are very highly respected authors, who are seen as literary greats. They can't write sex. It's awful. The next thing to look at is get shorty. So by that I mean write short things. Why? Well, there are a few reasons for this. You'll be writing every day, and it can be done. All it is a habit. So writing is a habit. When you get into the habit of doing it, particularly when you start writing a book, if you're just doing a bit every day, the next thing you know, you're finished. But it's a habit. It's like going to the gym. You get into that habit of driving to the same spot or walking to the same spot. It's like, oh yeah, we do this on Saturdays and Sundays. I don't even think about it anymore. My weekends are always Saturday morning run, Sunday morning run. That's just it. That's where are we going? Okay. I don't have to force myself to get there anymore. It's become habitual. So by writing something short and taking my 7-day Get Shorty challenge means that by the end of the week you will have 7 short pieces. And you would have written every day, which means that you would have found the time, the whole 10 minutes it takes to write one of those pieces. It also means that no matter how small the word count, the words are being written. Slowly is better than nothing at all. If you are even writing 100 words a day, that will get you to a book eventually, versus the 0 that you might be doing now. Talk as this is for you. And what do you know? For those who can't finish, you actually would have finished 7 pieces of writing. 7, finished. There they are, they exist. You can finish something. So if you can do that, you can do it with a bigger piece of work. So I've given you the 7-day Get Shorty challenge. Have a look, see if you can carve out 7 days. Start today, and each day do one of the challenges. They're all very short exercises. They're all slightly different, but it will test your creative mettle and get you writing something down, putting it on the page, and that's it. That is exactly the same as, having to write 2 paragraphs of your novel. If you do that every day, you will finish. The next thing we're going to have a look at as part of your Mojo Magic recovery is to do one thing differently. So sometimes not writing is because your creative well, and I'm borrowing from Julia Cameron here, has run dry, which means there's nothing to draw on. Creativity needs to come from somewhere. You have to feed it. You actually have to give it stuff to work with. So it's not surprising that the creative well can run dry, because if you consider the demands of modern day living, there's children, there's jobs, there's partners, there's relationships, there's traffic, there's commuting, there's shopping, there's admin, there's Netflix, there's so many things to think of, there's cooking, that you're like, wow, where do I actually fit in creativity here? Where's my time for me to fill up this well, this creative well? So it's very easy to get into the same old, same old. You need to shake it up. You need to have something to write about. You won't have anything to write about if you have no other experiences. Absolutely, you can write about the drudgery of life as it is at the moment, but it helps to get out of your creative rut and move out a little bit. And I'm not even asking for big changes, just a tiny difference every day. Little differences every day equal big change over time. One of these things you have to think of as incremental. It's tiny changes. So one of the ways you can do something differently is to actually switch up your process. Remember we talked a bit about process. That might be one of the things that's getting you stuck. So where do you write? So I always write in my bedroom, in my bed, with my laptop on my knees. That's how I write. It's become a habit. How do I switch this one up? Well, this one's earth-shattering. I go downstairs and sit on the couch. It is a different perspective because now I can watch everybody walking backward and forwards, because unfortunately I look out onto the complex parking lot. So I can watch everybody walking backward and forward. It is a different viewpoint. It is a different place. If I'm feeling particularly like I need to write somewhere else, I will take my laptop and write somewhere like my parents' house with earphones in so I can't hear them, although it's miles too distracting. They have a lot of cats. But do that. Go somewhere else. That can even mean different room, or sit in a different place. And so if you're always sitting with your chair facing out, do with your chair facing in. So switch around your chair. Maybe don't use your PC to write. Use a notebook for a little bit. Just see if it gets it going. Often that pen to paper will get stuff going. Just write a little bit. Just a paragraph. Start in the middle of your story. If you can't get your beginning to work, just think, okay, this is what's going to happen in the middle. I'm going to write that scene. Or maybe write your ending rather than your beginning. It's interesting to note every time I'm reading a manuscript submission, well, mostly every time, now that's a bit worrying, is the beginning is amazing. The ending, however, you can tell is like rushed. I wrote that once and I've read it once too. Listen to music you don't normally listen to. Or maybe if you don't listen to music, put music on and, see if you can just shake that up a little bit. Maybe write in the morning before anyone's awake if you're normally an evening person. So switch up your process. See if it makes a difference. Another way to do something differently is to switch up your creativity. So write in a different genre. So yeah, we're going for romance here, but maybe try something else. Maybe a bit of a thriller, maybe a bit of a suspense. Try and write something in a different genre, and it can just be a scene. If you head over to my workbooks, you'll see that there are different options there for you to try. Do something totally different. So draw or paint or sketch a comic strip, a kid's book character, a cartoon. If you're slightly artistically inclined, even if you're not, just draw something. Access a different part of your creativity. So sew or knit or crochet, bake something from scratch. If you're a big baker, do something artful with icing. You can tell I'm not a baker. Or try out a different recipe, something you've never attempted but always wanted to do. Maybe you've always wanted to do vegan Indian cooking. So, right, I'm going to give this a shot. Give it a try. Rearranging your furniture can sometimes help, unleash a creative spark. Or just go dancing, or stick the music on and dance for a few minutes. Shake it up. Just try and re-access those creative parts of you. The last way you can think about doing something differently is to switch up your experiences. So visit a new part of town. So my Google Maps sent me through an exciting part of town on Sunday on my way back from a long run. And as I was driving through, I was like, oh, look at that. There were interesting things that I hadn't seen around that part of town for a while, simply because I haven't driven through it for a long part. And so it gives me a new perspective, look at something else, look at something different. It's good to shake it up rather than going on the same routes all the time. Maybe read a different genre, something you'd never read. So if you don't read erotica at all, pick one up. If you don't read, like in my case, detective novels, it's like, right, okay, I'm going to pick one up and I'm going to give it a try, because it'll give you a different perspective. Watch a foreign film if that's not normally your thing. If it's action films, well, go and watch an action film. If you don't watch sport films, there's Creed 2 out at the moment. Go watch some boxing. Wander around an art gallery or a flea market or a food market, somewhere that you've never been before. Go, have a look at the sights and sounds. What are people doing there? Who's there? Take in a live concert, or even a different sport. That'll give you an entirely different perspective on life. Something like wrestling or boxing or rock climbing. Somewhere so that you are totally in a new experience with different people who have different experiences in a different setting. These are all things that start gathering up in your subconscious and that you can use and draw from when you want to write. You'll notice that if there's somebody who's traveled a lot, it's easier to write about different settings because you have a lot more experience to draw from. The next way that you can unleash your writing mojo magic is to celebrate the small. So I have no doubt that you've got this image of yourself signing that agent or publishing deal, giant bottle of champagne, Facebook update telling everybody, it's like, wow, here it is, wow, this is amazing, I'm going to go and have this big dinner now. Now that's a fantastic vision to have, and if you don't have something like that, have something like that, so you've got that big goal aim in mind about where you're going. But here's the slight problem with that. That might actually happen years from now. So what about all of your in-between successes? And I'm talking the small ones. So what I'm asking you to do is almost reward yourself and celebrate in some way every day for the small successes that you do have. And it can be around anything in the writing process. So did you pick up some romance novels in the subgenre you'd like to write in because you're going to give them a bit of a read? You did? Wonderful. Job done. How are you going to celebrate? You're going to get to read them. So, little celebration. Little celebration. Do those little Facebook, where it does that little thing. Did you spend some time working on a character's motivation? You did. Fantastic. Job done. Celebrate. How are you going to celebrate? I'm going to watch an episode of whatever it is I'm watching, or I'm going to go for a swim, whatever it is. Did you write a few paragraphs of your novel today? You did. You know what? Celebrate. Pew, pew. Guilt-free watching the sunset with a nice drink. So that's what I'm talking about, little celebrations. Is to always acknowledge what it is that you have done. So it's like, wow, okay, so for your talker, it's like, okay, I have written down the first few lines. You know what? That is worthy of celebration. For the talker as well, if they've even just put down, I have some idea of motivation, character motivation, some idea of an idea and how I'd like to start. Pew, pew, celebrate. Celebrate it. Acknowledge what it is that you have done. Acknowledge how far you have come along. That can help a long way in terms of creative recovery, is to look backwards and see how far you have come along. Maybe it's just acknowledging to people this is what you want to do. That's an acknowledgement. Acknowledge it and celebrate it. We don't do enough celebration. Also, I have no idea what your idea of celebration is, so make it your own, whatever that might be. Make it something that you love doing, and make it something to match the task. So if you did write one paragraph, that is not worthy of a nice big fancy dinner out. No, 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 no. Big fancy dinner out you can do when you've finished the book, Small one. So one paragraph would be like, oh, okay, so I'm going to go and watch a film, or I'm going to go for a little swim, whatever it is. It's a small thing. There are any numbers of little celebrations you can have, and you'll think of ones that suit best for you. But so long as you are continually acknowledging the work that you are doing, that's what's important. Writing's hard work. Celebrate all of your successes. And lastly, the fifth way that you can start unleashing your writing mojo magic is to find your people. Connecting with other romance writers is a surefire way to feel less alone in this otherwise overwhelming industry. Romancelandia is a very real thing. It exists. There are a number of romance writers out there and a number of romance readers. Connect up with them. In South Africa, we have Rosa, who have chapters in Johannesburg, Pretoria, Durban, and Cape Town, and they also have an annual conference. This is where you get to meet other writers, and as I say, they're in different stages of their journey. So there's some who have written something like 32 novels for Harlequin, and another woman who's written like 8 fantastic rom-coms for European publisher. So, there's all different writers in different places of their journeys versus the person who's just signed their contract, their first book's come out. And the absolute newbie writer I'm interested in doing this, I'm not sure where to start. So we've got everybody there. In the US, there's the Romance Writers Association, the RWA. They also have state chapters, an annual conference as well. It's about 15 times the size of Rosa. Also organizations in the UK, Australia, Canada. There are organizations where you can meet with other writers and connect with them and, maybe even collaborate with them on some projects as well. That's also helpful in terms of, getting out of your writers to write with someone else and see what they do. And then maybe share their process. Like, wow, okay, that quite works for me. Some people like to put together, drawings or pictures from magazines about how their novel's going to go. And you think, wow, I'm going to give that a shot. Oh, wow, that works for me. Thanks to the internet, it's never been easier to find your tribe of romance writers. On Twitter, I cannot tell you how many writers, agents, bloggers, editors, always chatting about their favorite topic, and that's romance writing. And I've lost count how many threads there are on writer difficulties, how-tos, what the publishing world's looking for, as well as scandals, like the Cockeygate scandal. It's all there. All of that information is there. You just need to tap into it, and you can find out everything that's going on, and be well versed in it and familiar, and see which publishers are probably best suited to you or not. You get a good idea of style about what's out there and also what's being published out there. You should be reading anyway, but it's an opportunity for you as well to see what editors are looking for. So start making connections to finding your romance tribe today. Thank you for joining me on 5 ways to unleash your writing mojo magic. I'd love to find out how it worked for you in terms of getting unstuck. Wishing you a happily ever after in your romance writing journey.